Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
Andy, let me start with what I loved about the trailer.
Tell me what you loved about the trailer.
I loved the Tron-esque way that the lines moved to build the word labyrinth.
That was really cool. I do agree with you. I thought that was pretty slick.
That was really cool. Yeah. Anything else?
Well, no. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, looking at the trailer now, it's a pretty rough trailer. If I were to watch this, I would feel it was maybe appealing to an audience much younger than myself. And so I was like, okay. I mean, I have kids, so I probably would take them, but it wouldn't be something that necessarily would be drawing me in. Going back to myself that saw this trailer, I think obviously it did its job because I remember wanting to see this movie and going to see this movie and loving this movie. So I think in that sense, it kind of did what it was trying to do. Unfortunately, it's like but I don't know if I were an adult back in 1986 and saw this. It's like I don't know who I couldn't figure out who this trailer was talking to. It highlights Jim Henson, George Lucas, and David Bowie, three people who were involved.
But were those names that kids would be like, oh God, this is a George Lucas production?
Well, but see, that's the thing. I think the kids were drawn in because of what they saw. Like I was drawn in because of the stuff that I saw, the characters, and kind of the comedy. That stuff was what I was drawn into. But as an adult,
so you think the parents are going for the pedigree?
Well, that's what I think that they were trying to do here with this trailer, saying, hey, Jim Henson, he does the Muppets. George Lucas, he did Star Wars, even though nothing in here looks like Star Wars, so it's an odd thing to throw in. David Bowie, and what do they say he is? He's the one of the most innovative forces in modern entertainment, which I was like, well, might be a stretch. But still, it's like it was creating this strange Venn diagram. And in 1986, I don't know if there was really much of an overlap between fans of Henson, Lucas, or Bowie. Maybe more so today, but still, I don't know. I mean, I think that they were trying to draw people in, but I just don't know. I think they were struggling. Yeah,
and I mean, it doesn't really celebrate music as much. I mean, there's a little bit of it, but you don't get a sense that it's a musical movie so much.
Well, and that's a hard thing to do in trailers anyway, cutting in bits of songs. I mean, Disney's done it a few times with some of their animated films, and it's you get like, a refrain or something really brief, and you can't really connect to it very well. I mean, more so they'll kind of cut those trailers together after the movie's been out for a while. It's like, come back and see Aladdin again and make it a part of your world, and then they'll break into song, A Whole New World, something where it's like everybody already knows the song now.
Well, I think we've learned a lot, though, because, I mean, look at the trailer for The Greatest Showman, which looks terrific, and it definitely celebrates that this is a musical movie.
I haven't seen it, but I believe... I believe you.
So good. Clearly, we've learned a lot in the last 3 decades. But point taken. The trailer doesn't celebrate enough of the fact that this is a musical movie, and maybe that's okay because as a musical movie, it's pretty anemic, and maybe the trailer just represents that. I'm on it. I know.
Well, but you're right though. It's David Bowie music, and I mean. I think that his music has its fan base, but I don't think it's, just kind of the general movie musical kind of pop stuff that would be out there that would be drawing people in much easier. Like they use a clip of "Within You" in the trailer, which arguably is the one, like I would say, his most challenging song in the movie. Right? It's a darker song. It's not something that sounds fun at all. It's not like they used, dance magic.
Yeah, like the dance magic,
dancer.
Right?
Yeah, it's a tough song to kind of throw into the trailer.
Or Chili Down,
right?
Yeah, weird.
Yeah,
so weird. Would have been better if they just run Space Oddity all the way through.
TriStar Pictures announces the collaboration of 3 extraordinary talents. Jim Henson, creator of The Muppets and Dark Crystal.
Here you go with a head like that.
George Lucas, creator of the Star Wars saga. And one of the most innovative forces in modern entertainment, David Bowie. Together, they will take you into a dazzling world of fantasy and adventure.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
A world where anything seems possible, and nothing is what it seems.
Everything I've done for you. I move the stars for no one. Run so long, run so far.
The world of Labyrinth.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, David Bowie shows us everything he's made of in our latest Listener's Choice pick. The last one for 2017. It's Jim Henson's 1986 film, Labyrinth. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you enjoy this show and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back channel conversations on Slack, listen to the members-only weekend show, and get better chances of being part of our next Listener's Choice episode when we have that kicking off sometime, I don't know, in the middle of early-ish in 2018.
2018-ish.
Yeah,
Totally unrelated. We should probably build our 2018 schedule.
We probably
totally
should.
Unrelated.
We probably
Asking for a friend.
But yes, just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
Andy, before we dig into the movie, we did have the opportunity to have at Bowie, Melanie from Melbourne, joined us to introduce the film we're talking about tonight. She was very kind, very generous with her time, and we had the opportunity to chat with her about why she chose this particular movie. I think we should go talk to her right now.
What do you want? You want a story? Huh? Once upon a time, there was a beautiful young girl whose stepmother always made her stay home with the baby. And the baby was a spoiled child, and he wanted everything for himself, and the young girl was practically a slave.
All right, welcome to the show, Mel, all the way from down under. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am good. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
So, Mel, you won the Listener's Choice Challenge here with us. This first choice or last choice of the year. Last choice of the year. It's the holiday choice.
Mm-hmm.
And to celebrate, you picked a movie that is special to your heart. Do you want to introduce it for us?
So I've picked Labyrinth, which is special to my heart. It's actually the first movie that I ever saw where I saw like a spoiler behind-the-scenes show before I actually saw the movie.
Ooh.
I thought it would be a nice tribute to all the spoilers that you do that I picked up.
I love that.
I love it. It's like it's an homage. What was the spoiler? How were you spoiled before the movie?
So I never saw this at the cinema. There was like a TV special on a Sunday night. I think I was about 11. And it was all the behind the scenes of how they made the movie because it was a big sort of Jim Henson, Frank Oz, kind of, it was all the time of Fraggle Rock and Dark Crystal. So I saw this 1 hour TV special before, probably 2 years before I'd even seen the movie. So by the time I saw it, I knew all about how they'd made it and the special effects. I love the movie in its own right, but that's why I picked it for this one.
And it's one of those movies that I think for some people, it hit at the right time in their life where they found themselves just really connected to it and have kept that connection through the years. Other people might look back on it and go, they might watch it now as an adult and go, that's kind of an odd little movie. But I'm one of those people where it did just completely hit at the right time in my life. And I don't know if it's just me or if I'm just too judgmental, but I have a hard time seeing a movie through other people's eyes when they don't like it. I really like it. Like something like this. Like I could never see that version of it. Like, what are they watching? This is a brilliant movie.
I feel sorry for them.
I do too.
I don't not like this movie. I just haven't seen it as much as you guys have, clearly. I remember liking it very much, although I also remember it giving me just horrifying nightmares. The helping hands are a disaster for my psyche. And stuck with me for years and years, even long after I remembered the general, or I'd forgotten the general premise of this movie. I don't know if I was. Let's see. When did it actually come out? It hit in '86. I was not too. Yeah. I wasn't too young for it. I definitely, I was a teenager.
It just plagues on your fears of being groped too much.
That's too soon, Andy. I don't know if you know what's going on in Hollywood right now, but that's way too soon. That's a trigger word.
Yeah, right.
So what is it, Mel, that connected you with this movie? I mean, obviously we've Sarah Jennifer Connelly. Did you find a babysitting heroine in her?
I had an older sister, or have an older sister, and she was like Sarah for me at that time, always off having adventures. So I was sitting at home going, oh, I'd like to do that, and also I had to get a vest. As soon as that movie was done, I was like, oh my God, where can I get a vest from?
My memory of this, and I haven't watched it yet for the show yet, but my memory of it is that she was a real jerk to like children.
Her baby brother.
It was like way too much.
Who she wishes away with the Goblin King.
Right. Just what a jerk.
He's very self-centered.
She's a sibling, siblings are that way. I mean, you know that. You have siblings, Pete.
Yeah, well, I birthed them. I didn't grow up with them, so maybe that's why I totally can't relate.
Are you you're the oldest, are you?
I'm the oldest. Pete is an only child. But I have a sister, and I certainly saw in Sarah kind of that love-hate relationship that you sometimes have with your sibling when you're a kid. It very much felt that way, and it made sense to me. Her brother was just dragging her down.
He's the baby infant boat anchor. That's what he is, just a boat anchor on her social life. I sort of can't get over the people who are involved in this film. Obviously, it's a Jim Henson kind of Frank Oz joint, but Terry Jones, Dennis Lee, produced by, holy cow, that's George Lucas.
Yes, it is.
It's kind of an amazing group of people at this period of time.
Not to mention David Bowie.
Yeah, right?
Yes, with his incredibly tight pants.
Oh my God. My younger sister and I that's all we used to laugh at. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, wow, those are the Dance Magic dance scene. I just remember it's like, maybe he shouldn't be wearing those pants while he's dancing like that.
In a children's
movie.
Were you a big fan of the Muppets and like everything Jim Henson was doing, Mel?
Yeah, I was actually at that point. So that was actually why I was first interested in it, because I think they were pitching it at a time, in kind of, if you love Dark Crystal, you should see this.
Yeah, probably.
But it's not really. For me, it's completely different. I think Dark Crystal is a children's movie. This has kind of got a weird combination of lots of things in it.
Yeah, it's interesting because Dark Crystal is definitely a darker movie. I mean, that has some darkness for kids. Although I loved it as a kid, it's just it didn't feel the need to talk down to kids, and I think that's why maybe that one has always stuck with me too. And this one's always kind of had a magic about it. It really kind of went kind of a different, like a more musical kind of wild direction with its fantasy. And I think that was, I don't know, I thought it was always kind of a fun way to do it.
It's the scene though where they decapitate people, the puppets' heads and limb swap. I've always found that really that's the fast forward scene. If there's a fast forward scene in this movie, it's like, not going to watch that bit.
Those little creatures were pretty crazy. Like try to tear her head off and everything.
Yep.
And we gotta just say, because I know you were a big fan of our Star Trek series, which we just did.
I am.
I always loved the fact that Gates McFadden was involved with these guys at this time, and that she was involved in getting this movie made. She was the choreographer. Yeah, isn't that just crazy? Like I just like wrapping my head around that with Gates McFadden. Just always like it's just nutty.
She was in the behind the scenes spoiler thing that I saw, and I'm like, oh my God, it's all so full circle. I didn't realize all these years later that I would love all the things that these people would do in the different sort of shows that they would go into.
That's amazing.
Yeah, right.
That blows my mind that Gates McFadden is the singularity. Like she brings everyone together.
She's the Kevin Bacon.
She is the Kevin Bacon. She's practically more Kevin Bacon than Bacon.
Oh, so funny. It's one of those movies that I saw it as a guy, and it's about a young girl kind of having this kind of fantasy adventure. And I don't think it really hit me at the time as a young boy who watched it. I just saw it as a really fun fantasy film and enjoyed it. But now, as a father of a young girl, I really love the fact that here is this story about this 15-year-old girl who goes on this amazing adventure. And I don't know if there were that many stories like that at the time. And now you certainly see more movies that are tailored toward girls and everything, or with girl heroes and everything. But it's and I think it speaks to the fact that, at least for kids watching it, it's like you don't even pay attention to those sorts of things. And I think that's something that really is special about this. But I think it's also something that now is just a highlight, being able to say, look, you can make these sorts of movies and it speaks to everybody.
I certainly notice it now, and I think I remember when I would say I was rewatched in my 20s, and I was a huge Buffy fan. And, this was kind of the first, you're right, this was sort of the first, female hero off on her own on an adventure. I know there was some chat on Slack about this in Goonies. I mean, Goonies was all about the boys going off on an adventure, and it was nice to have the girls there. But this for me, this was one where it's like I could see myself in her having an adventure, and I think that's why I liked it at the time. But yeah, you're right. I'm excited for my daughter to watch it. She's too scared of it at the moment. She's only 4, and she doesn't like lots of things about it.
When do you introduce your daughter to this movie?
I reckon it's another. I reckon it's 8.
All right.
For me, it's 8. Because she doesn't like some of the scenes are too scary for her. Mm-hmm. But she knows who David Bowie is now, and she's like, "Oh, that's a David Bowie owl. We saw one the other day out while we were going for a walk."
I had this experience with my kids. My kids are older, 11 and 15 now. And we're driving in the car, and they were asking me, "Dad, what's the movie for the week? What's the movie?" Well, it's interesting. We're going to be doing Labyrinth. This is, I think we should put it on for family movie night so you guys can see it. And it's about this young girl, and she wishes her baby brother away and goes to and my daughter starts filling in the plot synopsis, and she's doing it with that sort of roll of the eye kind of attitude. And she goes and she meets the Goblin King, and he's a famous rock star, and oh my goodness, then there's the puppets, and then my son starts picking up. She says, "Oh yeah, and there's the hand thing," and I'm like, "You guys, how do you know this?" And they said, "You showed it to us like 6 years ago, and that was way too early," my son says. I'm real sorry. I had no memory of it. Clearly, I'm in the wrong.
Oh, it's so funny. But that's what I loved about some of these kid films at the time, is that they were not just, talking down to the kids. They were actually kind of making them a little more, kind of some frightening stuff. Even like this and The Dark Crystal, both with some of these creatures have some pretty creepy moments. So it's something that these guys were doing. They didn't hold back, and I appreciate that.
Well, and I think that's part of the gift of Henson and Oz. Like, these are guys who felt like, we can use puppets to tell any story we want, and we're going to prove it. And that's going to be The Dark Crystal, and it's going to be horrifying to a lot of people, but it's going to tell the story we want. It's going to be Labyrinth. It's going to augment this amazing world. It's going to be, Star Wars. We're going to make a puppet a central part of this otherwise very human story. We're not afraid of using the tool that we love so much to actually tell the story we want to tell. And I think that is, that's amazing. All the way up through, what was that? Fantastic is one of my very favorite science fiction shows. It's from Australia, actually. It's the
I can't help
No. I know you can, and I am sure if you were a fan of Buffy, you gotta know this show. It was Farscape. Farscape, please.
I never watched it.
Okay,
never did it. Never watched it.
Andy, you are pardoned, but Mel, I'm sorry. Welcome to the show. This is your first public shaming. Really?
Yeah, really.
Oh my goodness, this show was great. It was so much fun, and it was full of great performances and wonderful puppets. And it was exactly what I'm talking about. We're just not afraid to tell the stories we want to tell and light them and goo them and make them look really, really gross. But they're just, of course, they're puppets, and you're going to believe it because you fall in love with it so quickly. So high marks to Farscape. That's a fun sci-fi romp. Consider it homework.
Consider it.
Okay, well, this is. I'm really excited to watch this again. This is. It's one of those movies that I know I clearly have watched in my house in the last 6 years, but I am shamed to know myself that I don't remember doing it, and so I'm really excited to jump back into it on the show. I heard somebody was mentioning to somebody that we were doing this, and they said, "Oh yeah, Labyrinth. That's Dark Crystal plus Adventures in Babysitting." I thought, I think that's probably pretty close.
That's funny. I guess it can be. Sure.
Any final words you have for us, Mel, to wish us on our way to watch and review this movie? What would you like us to particularly watch out for?
My favourite scene is I like the iconic scene when David Bowie first appears and he's doing the juggling with the orbs, which at the time I thought, oh my God, I'd love to learn how to do that. And then I realised that he never does it. And that was a bit devastating that it's some very experienced person standing behind him doing it. But I just love the thing when he first appears.
That's the thing he's doing, like rolling the orbs on his hands and fingers and things.
Yeah. And I remember sitting in my room like trying to do it. I think probably with a tennis ball or something lame like that. But for me, that's the scene that says to me, okay, here we go. We're about to watch an amazing adventure.
Outstanding.
You weren't alone in trying that. So,
Andy, what do you think? Are we ready to go?
Fantastic. Yep. Let's start chatting about it.
Let's dig in. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Mel from Australia. Where are you? Are you in Melbourne?
I'm in Melbourne.
Melbourne, all the way from Melbourne for jumping in and for jumping in on Slack. It is just great to have you on board, and thanks for all your contributions. And now on to the show.
Thank you. See ya.
Listen, she's going to say the words.
I can bear it no longer. Goblin King, wherever you may be, take this child of mine far away from me.
Oh, that's not it. Excellent, that rubbish. It doesn't even start with I wish.
Andy, I feel like I hadn't watched the movie before we spoke with Mel, and I told you I hadn't seen it in a long time.
Right? Yeah, you did say that.
And you watch it every Friday.
I sure do.
You're really connected to it. My memory of it was so far off. I mean, bananas. It's like a different movie. I didn't even remember there was music in it. Like, I really didn't remember there was music. They started singing. I thought I saw the wrong movie. I remembered a lot of elements that were like elements that I thought were scary or kind of shocking, surprising, funny, cool. But I didn't remember the whole thread of the movie. I don't know what happened, but I'm nervous to say this out loud. I was not as connected to the movie as I had hoped to be. How's that? That's delicate. I think that's delicate. But a lot of that was also influenced by watching it with my kids. And my daughter is roughly the same age as Sarah. And my son is obviously younger, but they also were, I think, generously bearish on this movie. My daughter said this was forced. The music, both of them were big thumbs down on the music. They said the comedy was forced and weird. It never made sense why the way they did the puppets. The Chili Down song was just so out of context. Like, my own kids did not relate to this movie the way I thought that they would. And so I think that even influenced my impression of it. It's just, it just didn't hold up.
Well, obviously you're speaking for yourself. Because, this is a movie I grew up with. This is one that I fell in love with as soon as I watched it. I had the cassette tape and I memorized it. I knew every beat of Trevor Jones' score. I knew every note and word of the songs. I just completely loved it. I bought the VHS as soon as it came out and I watched it all the time.
And you still feel that way when you watch it today. You watch it and you feel it, or are you the 10-year-old kid?
Oh, I now watching it, I see problems in it. I definitely do see issues throughout, but I have a hard time letting go of that young self watching it. I mean, I really just have a lot of fun watching it. I actually think there's a lot more to this film than I even probably realized at the time. My kids just love it. My daughter, she's just like, "Oh, I just watched that, Dad. I don't want to watch it again." And I'm like, "Well, I have to watch it, so you don't have to, but I'm going to." And it didn't take long, and before she was sitting on the couch next to me watching it with me, and my son just, he was sitting there. We loved it. It's a movie that I that is close to my heart, and it's one that I have always loved and probably always will love, despite some of the issues that I have with it.
Well, I'm excited to hear about those issues. I asked my daughter, and this is what I've heard. And this is obviously we've talked about this. My daughter, I walked out in the hall just before we pushed record. I was out there talking to her. She was picking up maggots off our counter. Don't ask. Totally long story. And she's into that kind of stuff. And I said, look, just one more question on the movie. This main character, are you okay? Are you going to be able to recover?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
Maggots,
stay cool,
yeah,
Andy.
I'm
Stay
good.
cool. Just picking the maggots, maggots off the counter. And I said, is there, like, you're roughly her age, and do you find that you can relate to her? Like, even if you think about the opening sequence, when she's still in human land, and she said, nope, not a little bit, not even a little bit. She just did not connect to Sarah. And I thought that was that really surprised me. And maybe it was because she was distracted by the maggots. I can't confirm or deny.
Can neither confirm nor deny the influence of the maggots.
I think it has a lot of heart, but my goodness, the Bowie music it's really dates it. And I think for somebody like me who doesn't have the same connection to the movie that you do, the musical numbers were out of whack. They were tonally out of whack. They didn't fit. They were I think too sort of psychedelic for the film's good. And I'm super bothered by the fact that the Goblin King is a high-haired, made-up dandy, and all the goblins are ghastly puppets. Like, I've always had a problem with that. And so, if he's the Goblin King, he's a goblin. Make him look like a goblin. And don't put him in those pants, for crying out loud. It's just terrible.
I think that what you just said is the music seemed too psychedelic for the film. And to me, it's like this film, if it fits. I mean, this world is so nonsensical and illogical and almost psychedelic, where I think that it works. I think it actually has this nice feel with it. I think it's an interesting tone that Bowie brought to it. I mean, yes, it might, I don't know if it's 80s-ish or what, but I mean, definitely when you get to Trevor Jones' score, which we'll talk about, I mean, it's definitely like the 80s synth sound that was definitely going whole hog throughout. But I feel like that there's some element of fairy tale that has a feel that fits well with the music here. I also think that in the world of fairy tales, I think it makes sense where you've got this handsome king ruling like these awful, ugly goblins. It feels very much like something that you would find in a Grimm's fairy tale. And I really
feel like if he's the king of the goblins, like that's different than the Goblin King. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
no,
it may sound semantic, but
no, I see that, but I don't know. I guess I don't have a problem with it, especially because a lot of this is largely, I think you could say it's in Sarah's head. I mean, this is kind of falls into that Wizard of Oz, Time Bandits, Alice in Wonderland, those sorts of stories where it's like, did it really happen, or was it all just in their imagination? I think all of these stories largely set it up where it really did happen, even if it seems like it's in their imagination. But I think it taps into the imagination of the particular protagonist in any given story and fits within their world. And I think Sarah is a really interesting character because she is this teenage girl who's kind of on that borderline between being a kid and being an adult. And she still is very much like a kid, but right from the beginning in her room, you see a lot of the childish playthings that she has in there and the childish books and everything. But then you also see that she's doing her little magazine cutouts, and she's putting, the cutouts of the handsome people up on her mirror and everything that she's kind of, has goo eyes over and stuff like that. And I think that having the Goblin King played by David Bowie fits really nicely with what's going on in Sarah's head. This split that all of a sudden is happening, where she's starting to grow up a little bit. She's starting to maybe find some men attractive, and she's starting to move into that world. And that's what I really enjoy about this film, is that it's so much about what's going on with Sarah and this journey that she's taking, not just this physical journey, but also this emotional journey as she's starting to grow up and having to kind of change a little bit.
Well, and I agree with you. I think she is good. Even, I think her coming of age story, I feel like it has some hard edges. Like it's tough to really like her early in the film. It's tough to like her because she's whiny. She's not nice to her brother. She's really entitled, and it's all there. It's all part of, the age. And I think they're sort of ham-fisting what you're talking about, that she's growing up and it's awkward, and we only have a few minutes to convey that. And as a result, it ends up being heavy-handed.
Well, and some of that is, I think, falls to some pretty bad writing and directing in that opening scene at her house. It's pretty terrible.
It's some very strange things going on there, and I definitely agree with that. Although there's some elements that I think are really, really good. I adore her learning lines, like in the out playing the princess, and she's like reciting lines from the book, and I think that sort of frivolity, she's like approaching that sort of play with a level of sophistication, and that's what it means to grow up, finding the thing that usually, I used to love Legos and just jamming blocks together, and suddenly there's a day when you want to do Legos and you're building the Death Star. You know what I mean? Like, it goes from a level of play to sophistication, and she's going from a level of just loving fantasy to a level of actually learning lines and reciting lines and acting, and I think that's really fun. And the fact that it turns from what you think is this kind of this sort of prissy, girl playing Fairyland, it starts to rain, and she suddenly is just traipsing through the rain with a muddy dog, and still has that major jolt of tomboy, which is just so it's so charming, watching her kind of exist in her skin. And I think that's really fun. I like those elements a lot, and so I found them really touching.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Jennifer Connelly fits that really well and brings a lot of that to this role, and I think that she works as this older sister. And yes, she's a little whiny, and I think maybe we could have. I think if you moved this into kind of modern screenwriting, you could have ended up having a better, like a save the cat moment with her, or something that was toward the beginning that kind of gave us a little more to like about her right out of the gate. But you're right, she is mostly pretty whiny. The setup with her dad and stepmom is a little rough. The setup with her brother, like all of that, she just comes across as a really whiny girl before wishing her brother away, and the Goblin King takes her and all that. But I don't know, maybe it's just I have seen this so many times where I've kind of grown and I've connected with her more, and I find it easier to kind of go along with the journey she ends up taking, and I don't have those problems anymore with her being a little rough at the beginning.
I do have a significant context-related problem with the relationship between her and the Goblin King, that it is such a significant age discrepancy, and that she is so clearly young, even though she is aspirational to his attentions. Say that's the case we want to make in this film. Watching it with today's eyes is tough to swallow because the mechanics don't work, and you're sort of forced to think about when fantasy becomes impropriety.
Well, yeah, I mean, looking at it with today's eyes, I think you're going to run into that, and I think
it's creepy.
I think that's all. It's going to be. It's the curse of looking at it with everything going on in society now. It's just like it just makes it much more difficult. Now, I think when you go back and you look at it through the eyes of of this young girl who's going through puberty and is starting to kind of come into her own and look at it, it's really her story in her head, and it's about her kind of finding things that she is attracted to, and it might be this man, this Goblin King. If it were like a rock star or something, granted it is a rock star,
It is actually literally a rock star.
But if it were just a rock star and not a Goblin King, and it was more of a real world sort of story, then I think it would have a lot more issues because it falls into the fantasy world. And I don't think there really ever is an idea of a romance between them, despite the fact that Jareth does kind of seem to allude to that a few times. I don't think that that's necessarily.
You don't think the dance sequence is the implied romance?
To a certain extent, yes, but also I think it's his way of distracting her and making her forget about what is really at stake here.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. But to put her in this fancy adult dress and put her in the context of this fancy adult party, distraction or not, they are holding each other close. They're dancing close. And I think part of that sequence and part of her running away, one is, I got to rescue the baby, right? But two is I'm uncomfortable in this relationship. Maybe this is something that I thought I wanted and I really don't, and it's scary and I'm not ready for it. And there are all these sorts of we confront the conflict that puberty presents. Right, you talk a good game, you cut out lots of cute magazine faces, but when it comes time to actually face what it means to have a more adult relationship, it's terrifying.
Sure,
you don't know how, and so so you run away. And I think that is the sequence. What that sequence represents to me, right? That's what it's trying to demonstrate.
Sure, yeah, it is scary, and I think that's an interesting element about this film that they don't shy away from. They're actually, exploring this girl and this point in her life where she is growing up and she's starting to go through these moments, and it does end up posing itself as a much more frightening moment for her. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do too. I do too. I love what the film is trying to do, and I think you get that moment. You also have this beautiful moment that I think is a little bit more slapstick. Right after she does the two doors, the lying door and the truth telling door, and she says, "I'm getting smarter," and then falls down a well. I mean, that's just a beautiful bit of comedy that also celebrates the same thing. It's like I'm exploring my ego. It's flowering because I am awesome, and oh my God, I'm not awesome.
Yeah, and that always that takes us right to your most terrifying place, which is all the hands everywhere, which I think is hilarious because now in context, having seen more films and everything, it's like watching Repulsion for kids is what we're getting here.
That's right.
This is this terrifying thing, and just another funny thing. I think it's funny that in order to call the goblins to take her brother away, she has to say the right words, and it's like Candyman for kids, like all these little things.
Totally Candyman for kids.
It's so funny.
It is like Candyman for kids. I think that's what it's trying to. That's kind of what it's trying to accomplish. It's a gateway film, I think, for kids, and in that respect, I think it's great. And what they did, I'll say the word technology, but really I'm going to say this too. The manual approach that they took to make the helping hands was stunning, right? It was beautiful and smart.
Yeah. It's so fantastic. It again, it's just one of those elements that adds to the building of this world, this absurdist world where really anything is possible. It's just one more element that not only does it fit perfectly within everything going on in the world, where you have these multiple hands coming together to form faces that can actually speak. I think it also speaks to the brilliance of Jim Henson and the level of puppeteering he and his team were operating on, where they were exploring kind of every different option that they could come up with in order to do puppets. They had little tiny hand puppets. They had full body costume puppets that people would wear. They had the fireys were, I can't remember what the term is for the type of puppets, but it's where it's done on like a black velvet stage. All the performers are wearing black velvet outfits, and then they have puppets that they're actually manipulating in front of them. And that's how they filmed the Fireys, which was a different kind. Then they had like the giant like robot, armor guy that pops out of the door. That was like this big thing. It's like this giant puppet driven by a puppet. It's like so many levels that they had going on here. I just was constantly impressed with the work that Henson and his team were doing to not just do really cool things with puppets, but also develop puppeteering and explore new ways to do puppeteering.
Well, and it made me think of, believe it or not, the first Star Wars prequel. That they would use, that the Fireys would end up being the sort of full-size body puppets tied to the actors with sticks, and so is C-3PO in that movie. And I think that's actually really cool that we have a glorified puppet of such an important character. In a movie that's such a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It made me actually wax rhapsodic about the first prequel for about 3 seconds. So there you go.
Fantastic. There you go. Praise for the Phantom Menace right here.
See, I don't even speak its name. You want me to talk about Voldemort all the live long day, but no, I will not say that name in that film.
So funny.
Is this film, is this where, speaking of Harry Potter, is this where Hogwarts came from?
I don't know. I was wondering that too, because I'm like, Hogwarts?
That's awesome.
It made me wonder if Rowling had just recently watched this before she sat down with her napkins.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. We're referring, of course, to Hoggle, the amazing puppet, human puppet combo creature.
Right.
Another stunning use of puppet technology.
Yeah, I mean, Hoggle is a kind of a little dwarf goblin mix that ends up befriending and helping Sarah. And Hoggle was controlled by 4 puppeteers. There was a little person inside Hoggle, played by Shari Weiser. Brian Henson did the voice, and he was also operating the mouth so that he could kind of talk while he was doing it. And then there were the other puppeteers who were running all of the different motors. There were 18 motors just in Hoggle's face to do the eyebrows and the eyelids and the nose and the lips and everything. And you watch that, and so Shari Weiser, the little person who was kind of running around in Hoggle, had to kind of peek through the mouth when she could. And she also had to wear these giant robotic hands because Hoggle had much bigger hands than her own. And she had all these controls in her hands to try to like pull handkerchiefs out of her pockets and whatever. It's just like an insane amount of technology went into making this puppet do what it could. And I think it worked really well. I think Hoggle is just a fantastic feat. And actually they were talking about I think it was one of the making of that came out around the time the movie did, where they say climbing the ladder for Hoggle when Hoggle and Sarah are escaping the oubliette was actually like one of the most dangerous stunts in the film because it was so hard for her to actually grab onto the rungs of the ladder. It's like, wow, in context, that is pretty interesting.
That's amazing. That is amazing. She's wonderful. What did you think of Hoggle as a character? I was puzzled by Hoggle. It was one of the weaker characters for me.
I didn't think so. What I think is nice about these characters is, and actually it's funny because I think Henson ended up, that he and Brian Froud had kind of come up with this concept, and eventually he brought George Lucas on to kind of help him because Lucas had a lot of understanding of just the structure of stories and kind of the mythos of storytelling and everything. And I don't know, I know George Lucas kind of did some work on the script. I don't know specifically, but I felt like these characters do fit into certain stereotypes or certain character types that are kind of key story characters. And Hoggle seems like this one who is very much, the loyal friend, but is kind of afraid to commit. And I liked that bit with Hoggle, where Hoggle is kind of too cowardly. He likes the fact that Sarah wants to be his friend. He's never had a friend before, and here Sarah is like, say, hey, you're my friend. he loves that, but he's also a coward. He's afraid of Jareth, and so he keeps doing what Jareth says, even though it's going to affect his friendship. And I thought that was a really interesting character trait, and I thought it was a really strong choice for them.
See, I like how you describe it. I just didn't find it as compelling in the film. Like, it felt so much more like like the character never really committed. Like, anytime we're stuck in a position where the character has to make a choice, has to make an emotional choice, I didn't get it. It was not written with enough of a commitment. And it's so hard. Recognize how hard it is to convey the kind of commitment through acting when you're in a mechanical sort of machine like this. I recognize that. My case is that it was not written to resolve in a compelling enough way that we could see the character's change coming. Like, we could see the character had learned a lesson, had made a commitment, had actually faced faced his demon and moved forward in a new light. So it was sort of an anemic transformation when he finally shows up and gets in the big metal guy, and I just didn't find it a character that I was eager to go back to.
Well, I can see that. It makes me sad, but
that's your counterpoint. It makes you sad, Andy. I will not fall for your emotional toying.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I already kind of gave you my point. Yeah. You were counterpointing, so
you're right. I was counterpointing.
So I don't need to counterpoint your counterpoint.
Okay. Things that another thing I really loved. Can we talk about Michael Motion?
Yes, please.
Oh my goodness, this guy is amazing. Now, I, of course, was one of the legions who believed for many, many years until probably last week that David Bowie actually at one point learned to do the juggling thing with the crystals. David Bowie did not learn to do the juggling thing with the crystals. It was a guy named Michael Motion, and Michael Motion is amazing. He is amazing. He did the whole thing, all of that, the crystal work, the ball juggling and the flipping, dipping doobly-doo over his hands, making it look all cool. He did that blind, ducking behind David Bowie with his own arm in David Bowie's sleeve up in front of him, at least for a number of the shots that they captured. I mean, the hoops they had to jump through to stage Motion in position to shoot as if he was David Bowie's arm. Wonderful and innovative, and I was really moved by that.
Jim Henson said, I can't remember how many takes we had to do to get it right, but it was a lot.
Did you the behind the scenes stuff? There's a lot of it, and there is one in particular where he's talking to Bowie is talking to Hoggle, and he's about to throw Hoggle he whips his hand up and he does one of the flippy dippy things, and then he throws the crystal to Hoggle, and Hoggle catches it, and it's a peach. And so they're shooting that sequence, and Motion just can't get it. He's over and over again. He whips it up, and it falls. He whips it up and it falls. And you can see his face nestled in the small of David Bowie's back, and it's just cringing. And the guy seems like quite a stoic. Like, you don't see him speaking a whole lot. He seems to be kind of an introvert, and you can tell he's just crushed by not being able to get it. The results are fantastic, and clearly Bowie was unfazed. He was laughing the whole time. I think it was just great.
It was really magical, and I will tell you, Pete, I have been living in the same world as you all these years, thinking that Bowie was doing it all himself. I was completely stumped that I was like, no, there's no way that somebody else is doing that. And then you watch that footage, it's like, wow, all these years.
It's an example of some amazing, just straight up trickery that we love so much, right? I mean, it is fantastic, guerrilla film architecture. And I think it's so smart and so precious. And it's something that this film does extremely well. And so, whatever I think of the story and how all the pieces come together, this kind of thinking that goes into this film is something to really celebrate.
It's movie magic, and that's I think what these guys were doing really well. And I love the advances of CG and what they're doing with it these days. But at the same time, you watch some of the stuff that they would figure out on their own. to pull off back in these days. And it's like, there's something special about that, because now
truly.
If we were going to have somebody doing what Michael Motion was doing in place of Jareth here, you would just have, David Bowie moving his hand back and forth, and they would digitally add the ball later. And, it just takes some of that magic out of it. It's a little sad, but I mean, that's just kind of the way of it. But I do really enjoy this world building here. All of those sorts of things that happen, those brilliant things like that, just all the absurd and unexpected things. Another example I love is that fantastic moment when Hoggle, he's trying to find the right door, and he lifts a piece of wood up off the ground, puts it on a wall. He opens it. It's a closet. He closes it. He opens it the other direction, and it's the exit. I'm like, that is just, that speaks to the brilliance of what they were doing here.
Some of those things feel very Time Bandits to me. They feel, I don't know why Time Bandits does it so much better to my eye. But it does. But this certainly feels of a piece.
I mean, part of that is, I think Terry Gilliam has, despite the fact that Time Bandits still is ostensibly a film for kids, it's a much more adult sort of story. This is a Jim Henson film, and it feels very much a kids film for kids. It's not very adult. I mean, the humor is very absurd and silly. And I think some of that silliness, when it comes through, I mean, even in the big battle at the end, I mean, we're not getting, arms lopped off and things like that. We're getting, when the rock comes down and hits the goblins, it's like bowling pins. They go all scatter all over the place. It's silliness. And I think that is something that draws the kids in, and perhaps is something that made it harder for adults to latch onto this one than perhaps something like Time Bandits, or even in Jim Henson's own world, The Dark Crystal.
Yeah, I'm worried about watching The Dark Crystal again. I know it's on the list of things I need to watch with my kids. I tried a while ago and it was too much, but now after watching this, I'm actually worried about watching. I sort of want to protect my memory of it.
That's one that I also enjoy, but I feel the pace of that one is much slower than it drags for me. But I still, again, like this, really appreciate what Henson did with creating the world.
Well, you brought up that final scene. The staging of that final scene I had trouble with, and I know that, again, that's a scene that's possibly the most for kids of the thing. It's just mayhem. It's just hullabaloo. Everybody's running in circles. But I had real trouble because I was either always in place, I always knew exactly where we were, or they were reusing set pieces so frequently that it felt like the place was overused, too familiar, and lost a sense of place. And so I really struggled with all the running around. It's kind of the heat and heart of their journey into the labyrinth sort of lost momentum for me there.
I can see that.
Okay, point Pete. Do we need to talk a little bit about the backstory?
Yeah, I mentioned Brian Froud. He's an illustrator, an artist who has done some just beautiful character work and stuff like that, and worked with Henson, kind of coming up with the look and everything going on with the Dark Crystal. After that, they were chatting about other ideas for another project. And they kind of he threw out the idea of goblins, and they thought it would be pretty interesting. And Henson was like, well, I'd really like to do something that isn't just puppets, but I'd like to involve people in it too, and kind of combine them. And Froud was just like, well, what about a baby with all the goblins? And they really like that idea because in fairy tales, there's this whole idea. I mean, they pulled a lot from fairy tales, right? The whole idea of being able to have the goblins come and take a baby away. It's something from fairy tales. And so he painted this image of this baby sitting amongst all these goblins, and that kind of became the foundational concept for it. And Henson met with a friend of his, Dennis Lee, who is a children's book author, along with Froud, and they chatted about it. And Lee was going to write this novella based on the ideas that they could use to kind of come up with the script. No one really liked that novella, but it had a kind of a core there. And then they brought Terry Jones in to do the script, and he was really drawn to Froud's drawings and used those as inspiration, and kind of ended up kind of creating the script from there. But even then, the script went through a lot of changes because when David Bowie came on, he wanted, changes, or, Henson really wanted changes because he wanted to incorporate him more. He wanted songs in it. Jones didn't really want that. Just a lot of things ended up changing it. George Lucas had a pass. They brought in Elaine May. She came in and did a pass to bring the characters out. And from what I read, there were 25 treatments and different scripts before it was finally ready. And by the time it was done, Terry Jones said, "I didn't feel that it was very much mine. I always felt it fell between two stories. Jim wanted it to be one thing, and I wanted it to be about something else." In the end, I still think he was happy with it. But
I love his story of them shopping this around to other writers and then finally coming back to him. He says, Jim approached me and said, I'm sorry, I wonder if you could take another look at it. I feel like over the last while and all these other hands in it, we've made it unfunny. We've taken the funny out of it. And he said, I didn't want it. I didn't want to do it. But then he offered me sole script credit, and I thought, well, how can you turn that down? So, and that's why we have no other credit for all these other hands and all of these treatments listed on the film, and Jones has sole credit. It's
way to go, WGA. Where's the negotiations then?
Exactly.
When Henson speaks, apparently.
Right. So anyhow, this is, as a Jim Henson film, how does it feel under his direction?
I think that he's an interesting director. I don't think he's always like the strongest of directors. I think there are times throughout the film where it feels flat as far as the direction goes. It doesn't feel overly put together. It feels very much like something that he would do with the Muppets, where he's so used to the world of puppetry that I don't think he generally thinks outside of the box as far as the way that he can position or move his cameras, because you got to hide puppets. They got to, be here. So you're hiding the floor and all that sort of stuff. I don't think that's a problem, but I do feel now watching the film, the direction is a little underwhelming, and paired with some story elements I have in the script, those are some of the weaker parts of it. I think that what he does excel at, though, is telling a story with kids, for kids, with puppets, and making worlds come to life. And that's where I think he really just does exemplary work.
Yeah, he's a technician in that regard. You put him in the director's chair, and I totally see your point. He's absolutely the guy who's trying to figure out how to make the mechanics work first, and then the heart and soul of the film as a director. But I get the feeling that he was so much more of a guy whose own heart was in bringing the characters to life, and that's what he did. That's he is behind the most amazing, iconic figures. It's hard not to give him a pass on some of the more directorially oriented, flaws. But, he does have director credit on a lot of stuff. I don't have so much of a memory of The Great Muppet Caper that came immediately before this.
It has its moments. Its moments. Charles Grodin, I mean, come on.
Yeah, how do you lose? The Muppets, let's just say they're going to be on the list this week at some point. And he's got some episodes of Fraggle Rock and Labyrinth, obviously, and a number of pieces. But I don't think he's remembered for his directing.
Well, no, I mean, he is really remembered for the characters that he's created. Yeah. Absolutely.
Do we want to talk about our deep scene dive? Are we ready for that?
I think we should do it.
Andy, I had real trouble with this deep scene dive. It was not the one I sort of expected, but mostly because it starts with, it's very cool. It's very cool, but there's that stupid song.
Oh, fine.
Oh, stupid song. Stupid song.
Well, the scene begins. This is after they've defeated the goblins in Goblin City, and they have run into I guess you'd say, the palace at the center of it, and they find the main room empty. And Sarah says, "Oh, let's go up the stairs. This is where he is." And everyone's like, "All right, let's go." And she's like, "No, wait, I have to go do this myself, and because that's the way it has to be." And Didymus says, "Well, if that's the way it has to be, then that's the way you must do it." And off she goes by herself, and she goes up the stairs, and we begin our scene when she enters the room, and it is basically an M.C. Escher sketch of just the nonsensical, no direction room that Escher drew so famously.
Which is, as a throwback to her bedroom in the real world, that's another one of those pieces of I'm growing up and I'm going to exert my sophistication by putting an MC Escher poster on my wall. Right? I mean, tell me you didn't do that.
I waited until college, but yes. I was slow development. What can I say?
But it happened.
It did happen.
That's good. It did happen. That's what you do. And so, I think I actually think that's a great tie back that she has to actually face this element of her own growing up, her own sophistication. That's really nice. And I think they nailed it. Like the scene looks great. The set looks terrific. They used it well. They used the play with gravity well. I think that part visually they're still able to make it make sense, and that is a real challenge on a set like this to make Escher make sense on film, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean Jennifer Connelly, she's all over the place. Her brother Toby, played by actually Brian Froud's infant son Toby, is the baby, and he's crawling all over the place. And every time she thinks she's getting close, all of a sudden Toby's on the other side, and on a different plane. It was fantastic the way all of that unfolded. And then, of course, Jareth as David Bowie is singing, or I should say David Bowie as Jareth is singing "Within You," his song as he is kind of watching Sarah pursue Toby, and to a certain extent kind of getting in her way, at least toward the beginning of it. But then as it shifts, he ends up kind of just watching her as if he knows that she is growing up and moving past him to the point where she can figure things out on her own. And it's kind of an interesting element here, the way that that ends up playing out. Like, he doesn't become much of a threat. And I think that's nice, the way that really kind of Jareth is weakened, and by the time you get to the end, I mean, he's really just, there's not much left to him other than words.
Live without the sunlight, Andy. Love without your heartbeat. I can't live within you. I can't live within you.
So good.
So good. I mean, I guess that's the right way to have it play out. I can't imagine another way to have it play out other than, a final fight in which she bests him, as she bests the demon, the dragon, which is sort of what I felt like we were gonna get from the opening of the movie, that her coming of age meant she had to go best the dragon and not make it a battle of words. And so it's a little bit of a letdown for me in that regard. I don't like him like to see him neutered, intellectually. I'd rather see him actually slain.
You wanted to see a real neutering.
I almost said that, but I knew that you would cross the line. You would cross the awkward line. I don't want to see David Bowie neutered, and I knew I couldn't get away from that once I went down the neutering road.
Well, he had the pants. We would have known if it happened.
Those pants.
Oh my, yes. Well, I just think it's great. It's funny. I didn't really catch this until I think it was Froud who was talking about it, how when you get to the very end, and after she makes her leap of faith so that she can finally go rescue Toby, and then all of a sudden she falls into this kind of, everything falls apart, and she lands in kind of this other plane of existence where everything is floating, and she has this final verbal confrontation with the the Goblin King, and this is where that play that she was memorizing earlier comes into play, because she finally has to say it and realize, you have no power over me. And that becomes kind of a key point for her. But I didn't ever catch this, that Bowie's costume makes such a big change here, where he's kind of faded and white and very ghost-like, as if all of his power has been drained, because she has kind of gotten past all of that, and here he is. It's almost like this pale ghost of who he was. This he's just kind of this. I'm picturing him in Hayao Miyazaki land, where he's just kind of this fading away version of himself. Yeah. And he's left to do, like, he has no strength. All he can do is try to stop her from saying the words. And he throws out these lines, just let me love you, let me control you, and and I will be your slave, and all this. But it's like, it's nothing anymore. And I never really caught that kind of that fading of him, but I think it's actually really interesting over the course of this movie, and particularly this scene.
It is more of an interesting twist too, in that regard, with the lyric that he's singing. I mean, that he is now begging her. He's now begging her to stay with him, to make him strong again. At least that's the implication. That's what I'm sort of inferring. But you're right that his power only existed in direct relationship to his distance from her and her distant worship of him. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Point Andy. Cameras by Alex Thompson. This is, it's interesting and challenging, and I think just to mechanically capture the Escher thing and not make it come apart. There are a couple of other interesting elements too, that just the way they do that trick of the eye, with the first wall of that she has to pass through in the labyrinth. So there's that, with the walls were sort of overlaid, and it was like that 3D effect where she just had to walk through the hole. She just couldn't see it. And I thought that was very cool. And those are the sort of mechanical, sort of mathematical challenges that come with some of these setups. And so I think in this scene in particular, I think he did a great job.
Well, and they do a good job of playing around with all the different directions that we're looking, right? I mean, we've got not only do we have the ground, so to speak, where we are walking, but then sometimes you see David Bowie upside down from your view or sideways from your view. Same thing with Toby. And then when David Bowie flings the crystal out into the room, it bounces all over the place before bouncing up the stairs to Toby. So with all of the kind of the absurdist logic that they've built into this world, I think that they do a great job of bringing it to a point here in this perfectly upside down, all over the place world. It's great.
And I think the wider shots are better. I mean, I think that's where you really see that placement matters. Some of the reaction shots and some of the reversals are a little bit squiggly with the close-ups and matte replacement and stuff that looked a little bit off. But the big shots that let you really celebrate what they've done with the set and pulling that set together, I think were very cool.
I also love the physical effects that they do with particularly the moment when David Bowie, they have him in like a leg brace thing that brings him down upside down under the platform that she is on, and then on cue it lifts him and swings him around the platform to match up with her. And that's something that I always was just like mesmerized with, the way that ends up working. It looks so interesting in the film, and it's so creepy. And it's interesting to me now to learn that it was an actual physical effect they did with David Bowie in it.
He may not have learned the juggling thing, but they'll sling his body around.
Absolutely. Pretty cool.
Elliot Scott is behind the production design of this Escher-inspired set.
Yeah, and of the entire thing, I mean, this is, again, I think this is a person who built a fantastic world and found the right ways to kind of bring it to life for Jim Henson and his team.
Trevor Jones, Andy, your hero.
I do love this music. I love the music and I love the songs, and you cannot do anything to take that away from me.
Oh, preemptive strike.
There you go. There you go.
You can have them, Andy. They are all yours. I give them with an open and pure heart.
I totally acknowledge that the music is very kind of 80s synth, but that's what was popular then. When you couldn't get a big John Williams symphony to play, you'd throw together this crazy synth score. And I think what Trevor Jones does here is nice, and it's catchy. It fits the world, and I love it.
And, I'm not complaining about the synth score. I'm not complaining about the 80s, although there is plenty of ammunition to complain about the 80s. I am complaining that the movie as an identity crisis, that it doesn't know what it is, and that jumping back and forth between these wacky, Fraggle-ish musical numbers and the tone of the rest of the film is a discontinuity, and that's what I have a problem with. The songs, they're fine. They're fine. And in fact, they're earworms, right? They're manufactured to, stick in my brain. But my argument is they just don't work as a part of this movie. I would have preferred the movie without it. I
can see that, but it's a musical film. And I think in context of that, I think that they do fit again because of the anachronistic tones, perhaps, with some of them. I mean, Magic Dance feels very different than this song here, Within You. But I think that they still fit within kind of this absurdist world, and particularly because there are elements of silliness in this world. There are elements of romance. There are elements of just real peculiarity, and I think it captures all of that.
But I don't want to belabor this too much, but I just have to bring back up Time Bandits, who endeavors to do the same thing, although arguably, Terry Gilliam exists in a very dark place and has to tone his darkness down, whereas Henson lives in a very light place and has to tone his darkness up, right? I think that Time Bandits is an example of the kind of film I wanted out of this one, right? All the puppets, all of the silliness, and all of the great little vignettes. Without the songs, it's still a solid movie.
No, I agree. I think that that is. That likely is accurate, but it's not. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's just not what Henson set out to do.
No, of course not.
They were very much intending to make kind of a darker film with The Dark Crystal. Although they even acknowledged it ended up being darker than they intended.
Yes, right.
And so here they were trying to do something that was a lot lighter and a lot more jovial and fun, and something that was for the kids. For the kids.
All right. So we talked about Jennifer Connelly as Sarah. She's lovely.
14 at the time.
14 at the time.
I think that she had done Once Upon a Time in America before this, which I think was her first film. And then I don't think there was much between the two. I think Phenomena, 7 Minutes in Heaven were the only two things that she did in 1985, and then this in 86. So I think she's great. I think it's interesting to look at the other people that had auditioned. Initially, they had talked to Helena Bonham Carter to play the role, but then they decided, no, we need to go cast it with an American. So other auditionees with Jennifer were Jane Krakowski, Sarah Jessica Parker, Yasmin Bleeth, Marissa Tomei, Laura Dern, Ali Sheedy, Maddie Corman, and Mia Sara.
See, that is an interesting one, that last one in particular, because when did Legend come out? It was the next year or the year before?
I think it was the year before. I think it was 85.
That's I often transpose these movies, and when I see and think of Labyrinth, I'm usually thinking of Legend. They're very different.
Very different movies.
What I want in The Goblin King is what I got in Tim Curry.
Yes, but just as a reminder, there are also some really just silly, just bad comedy stuff going on in Legend. I know.
See, maybe I forgive that too much. All right, whatever. David Bowie as Jareth the Goblin King.
They also had Michael Jackson and Sting as different people that they had been considering to play the role. So it's an interesting group, and all of them had been in projects. So I think other film projects, and I think it's fair to see envision any of them kind of playing the Goblin King.
If we have to have the movie exactly as it is, and I know there are people who are in each camp who are devotees of these people, I'm Team Sting. Should have been Sting.
Maybe, but I don't know. I just have a hard time pulling David Bowie out of this. So I think I'll stick in myself in David Bowie camp.
Anybody else in the cast we want to talk about? We've got a lot of great supporting folks, particularly in these costumes and the goblins. And
I mean, that's really the bulk of the rest of the cast, right? I mean, you've got just a fantastic group of puppeteers doing just amazing work as whether it's the body puppets like Ron Muick or Rob Mills playing Ludo. And Rob Muick also did the voice of Ludo. We already talked about Hoggle. You have David Goles and David Barclay doing Didymus, with David Shaughnessy doing the voice of him. Karen Prell did the Worm. Frank Oz did the Wiseman. You've got, and then just other key puppeteers, Steve Whitmore, Kevin Clash, Anthony Asbury, a bunch of great people who I think really brought these characters to life. I mean, it was just, I don't know, just watching these puppets, I just feel like Jim Henson is a master at bringing creatures to life. They are just like, never do I see the person behind the puppet. I just always see this being there. Until
Didymus. And then Didymus has a character and a movement all his own. This, of course, he's the puppeteer behind Gonzo. And man, did I see some Gonzo in Didymus. Not the voice. They intentionally didn't do the voice of Dave Goles didn't do the voice. It was, as you mentioned, Dave Shaughnessy, and because they didn't want you to hear Gonzo. Yeah. But my goodness, did I love some of that movement. Although, what was Didymus? Is he a mouse fox dog?
I don't think they even knew. They just kind of, knew he was this strange mix of things. And I don't know. I kind of love that about him. There is something that described him as a small dog fox goblin. So I don't know if that's actually true or not. But yeah, there you go.
Well, the character design is actually based on Terry Jones' dog. Terry Jones has a dog, and that became Didymus, and that dog was named Mitch the Bitch. And so Mitch the Bitch is Didymus, and I find that delightful. You go, Terry Jones.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, hilarious.
The only other person that I had on my list to bring up is, and we mentioned this when we were talking to Melanie, is the fact that Gates McFadden is involved in this. She, and she's credited as Gates McFadden, but in the behind the scenes, she's mentioned as Cheryl McFadden. She did the choreography for the ball dance.
It's like she got married and changed the wrong name.
Right, exactly. Cheryl Gates. Nope. Let's just drop the Cheryl.
Drop the Cheryl.
She also was in charge of all the puppet movement and kind of choreographing their the movements and everything. And it's interesting watching the behind the scenes and seeing her working with the large groups of the puppeteers and the little people playing the goblins and everything, and just kind of getting them all in line to do their bits. So that's exciting to see.
Very fun.
And speaking of little people, I guess we should say Kenny Baker, Warwick Davis, Malcolm Dixon, Jack Purvis, a lot of people who we have either talked about on the show before, or people who warrant bringing up because they're just fantastic performers.
Yeah. There's one more bit of trivia, and I have to tell you, I know I did not watch closely enough, because as I was watching it, you messaged me and told me to look for the Bowie faces.
There are 7 different faces of the Goblin King that are kind of hidden throughout the film. And the big obvious one that I think everybody sees is the one where it's like a kind of a half face of him in stone, and then the camera trucks left, and you realize, oh, it's actually 3 stones, but when you line them up perfectly, it makes this face of David Bowie, and it's when Hoggle walks through before the whole scene where he gives him the peach. That's kind of the real obvious one. But there are these other ones that are kind of hidden throughout. And many people have done different YouTube videos where it's like, here, look at all the different faces. And it's this really interesting thing that they just kind of built into some of the sets, where you have these different kind of faces of him hiding in there. And it's almost as if the Goblin King is kind of spying and watching. And I think in story context, it's interesting because it's like the Goblin King is always watching. He knows what's going on. But I think in just the world of production design in the film, it's just a brilliant little touch that they threw in there.
That's very cool. I just put a link to a BuzzFeed article with the stills. If you are interested in seeing the faces of the Goblin King, they have the stills of all of the 7 of them. And they're very cool. They're super hidden. I did not see any of them except for the big one. I'm one of 6.
I caught, I think the kids and I caught 3 or 4. And it was one of those things where once I mentioned that to the kids, like they were just glued to the TV looking for them. Like, is that one? Yeah. Is that one? No, that's not one.
Well, see, you texted me. To be fair, I was not looking for them. To be fair. I'm calling it out. No, please give me credit. You credit, and I just seen the big one, like the one that you actually can't miss. And so the last 2, there are 2 that come after that one, and there is one in the rectal bog.
That's the best. The bog of eternal stench. Oh, so great.
So gross. They're in the cliff wall. It's one in the cliff wall, and it's so hard to see. Like of course, I would not have noticed that. And there's another one in the trees, just after they leave the bog of eternal stench, and it's in the trees. Maybe I could have gotten that one, but goodness, they are tricky.
They really are.
Very tricky. So this movie came out, and I know that they positioned a sequel, right? And it was all about PTSD.
Exactly. Sarah has to deal with the pain.
Has to deal with that. Yes,
she goes back and she joins a little club where it's they're
right?
Russian roulette.
It's oh man, you went much darker than I did. No one goes deer hunter from here.
Leave it to me. No, it's it's definitely one of those things where it found its audience. It became kind of a cult project, and in 2006 and 2010, a Tokyo Pop, they actually published a comic sequel, and it was a 4-volume sequel that they had put together. And I believe Archaea Studios is talking about doing a graphic novel prequel to their film. So pretty cool, pretty interesting about that. Looking at the Return to Labyrinth was the name of the 4-volume comic sequel. It looks really cool, and after looking at it, I'm like, I definitely have to pick that up and check it out because it just seems like something I would really enjoy. And then just last year, January 2016, Nicole Perlman said she's writing a spin-off story set in the same universe. And just this year, Fede Alvarez confirmed that he would direct and co-write the script with Jay Basu, Lisa Henson, and Duncan Jones serving as producers. So it sounds like something might happen. I don't know. You never know until it's really happening in Hollywood. But I'm really curious about this one because it is a story that certainly has grown a following. I'm wondering if it's something that can really keep it going.
I don't know. I hope so. But in the hands of Nicole Perlman, who I adore, she's wonderful. And then, what's interesting is that, I haven't seen a lot of Nicole Perlman's stuff, right? I mean, she's Guardians of the Galaxy, and then a lot of amazing things that are coming up, right? I mean, she's on Sherlock Holmes 3 and Mask, Mobile Armored Strike Command, Labyrinth, Black Widow. She wrote a treatment to the announced Black Widow standalone. Yeah, I skipped that. Did you see I skipped that? And then Captain Marvel. So she has jumped heavily into Marvel Universe, and she's big into pop culture treatments. And so I think very highly of what I have seen of her before, and I think it might be fun to see what she could do with this.
Did you say Detective Pikachu?
I also did not say that, Andy. I didn't. I was
everything that she's involved with, I am like, I have to see because I'm so...
I was trying to save you, man. I was trying to save you in your new... Like, you need an intervention, apparently.
No.
Addiction.
Well, no, but I think it's all... I think all of her projects, though, it's like such a strange amalgam of titles and stuff. I'm like, it's such an interesting mix. Rom. Yeah. I have one issue of that buried somewhere in my room. like now I want to go back and look at it and go, what about it is drawing them to make Rom into a movie?
I don't even remember Rom. What was Rom?
It was like
all
a
about?
robot character. I can't really remember either, but I'm really, really, really curious now. Rom.
Yeah.
Rom Comics, a Marvel superhero based on the Parker Brothers toy of the same name.
So there you go.
Yes, cosmic superhero. Yeah.
Anyway, she's definitely deep in the Marvel verse now, so it'll be exciting to see what comes from her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see.
How to do it awards season?
It wasn't a big award movie, if that could really surprise you at all. It did get 4 nominations at the BAFTAs. It got a nomination for Best Special Visual Effects, lost to Aliens. At our old friends, the Academy of Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Films, the Saturns, it was nominated for Best Fantasy Film, lost to The Boy Who Could Fly, which surprises me, at least my recollection of that movie. And it also lost Best Costumes to Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. And over at the Hugo Awards, the book sci-fi awards, they do something for films, and it was nominated for Best Dramatic Presentation, but lost to Aliens.
Oh, well, okay. I guess I'm okay with that. Out of doing the box office.
Well, Jim Henson and his team had a budget of $25 million to make this movie, or $55 million in today's dollars. The movie opened on July 27th, 1986, opposite American Anthem, Running Scared, and Ruthless People. Unfortunately, this movie really struggled to find its audience, and it opened at 8th at the box office, behind Karate Kid Part 2, Back to School, Legal Eagles, Ruthless People, Running Scared, Top Gun, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. With a packed several weeks afterward, it never improved either, and it looks like it actually was out of theaters in about 2 months, if you can believe it. The movie only ended up making about $12.7 million here in the States and about $182,000 internationally, for a total of about $12.9 million or $28.4 in today's dollars. Apparently, according to Jim Henson's son, Brian, the movie's failure made this one of Jim's most difficult periods in his life and in his career, and he didn't direct another feature after this. He had such a hard time with it. But I did read that when he was, it was pneumonia that he died from in 1990, I believe.
Yeah.
And right around
way
that time,
too young, 53 years old.
Oh, way too young. But it was right around that time. It's like the cult following had begun, and Jim knew that people were drawn to it. And Brian said that it did warm his heart knowing that it was finding its audience at that point. So that was good to know. So it has, like I said, it did become a cult film. And but unfortunately, at the time, ended up with an adjusted loss per finished minute of 263,302. So sad to hear.
And it makes me feel bad now.
Yeah, it's on you, man.
That inner codependent streak, me and movies, me and inanimate movies.
You made Jim Henson sad.
I made Jim Henson sad. Well, it didn't do well. I'm going to spoil you a little bit. It didn't do well on my Flick Chart ranking, and that's just because, what's it going to do? It's but I respect this movie. I respect the filmmaking, and it didn't hold together narratively for me, and I feel like it was cluttered in what it was trying to say and what it was standing for, but it was noble in its effort to do so. So I will, I'll stick with that.
I think that's fair. This is it's one that I love. I mean, I do acknowledge that there are issues with it. But I grew up with this film, and it's one that I hold close to my heart.
Well, Andy, with that, I think it's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you'll see our list of all the films that we've talked about on this very show. Or you can just swipe over in your show notes, tap on the Flick Chart button. It'll take you right to this movie where you can add it to your list. And let's see how it stacks up with ours. What's first?
First up, we have Labyrinth or Hot Fuzz.
Hot Fuzz, please.
I am...
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. I actually am going to say Hot Fuzz, but I will say I'm gonna work hard on this one, Pete, to try to delineate my love for this film.
Right, therapy begins.
Film, so Hot Fuzz it is. Labyrinth or Atlantic City. I'll take a Labyrinth, please.
Well, I mean, if it were just me, it would be Labyrinth. I don't want to be an enabler, I mean, it would be Atlantic City. I don't want to be an enabler here, but I am going to give you Labyrinth.
Why, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Labyrinth or the Deer Hunter? Speaking of.
I'm the Deer Hunter.
I am Labyrinth. Sorry.
Really?
Yeah. Deer Hunter is a hard film to watch.
True.
It's a great film. It is a great film. But this is one where I am voting on my
all right.
My
voting on
pleasure.
your heart, your 12-year-old heart. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Paper.
Rock. You won.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Labyrinth or Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Labyrinth, please.
Goodness, Andy. Okay, I'll give you Labyrinth. I don't want to, but I'm going to give it to you. I don't want to. Do you hear that, Internet? I don't want to.
I hear you. I appreciate you struggling with that one. Labyrinth or Pale Rider? Labyrinth, please.
Pale Rider. Pale Rider.
All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3. Scissors. Scissors.
Rock. Sorry.
Hoist by mine own petard.
All right, next up we have Labyrinth or Sophie's Choice. What a Sophie's Choice.
Man, the irony. Sophie's Choice.
Labyrinth.
Andy, okay.
I am so serious. All right.
Fine. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Rock.
Scissors.
Rock.
Ah! Ah!
All right. Well, that lands Labyrinth at 210 on our list. 210 out of 327. So, I think it's a good place. I think it's fair. It's 36%, I'd vote it higher. On my personal one, it's 221 out of 3882. So it's about 94%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's higher than mine. Wow. Mine, I have 1,003 movies, and this ended up at 745.
Oof.
Which puts it at 26%. Which I recognize. I mean, I recognize it for what it is. It hits some movies that I just could not. I could not, in good conscience, let it go against it. Maybe it would have been higher had Flickchart not, delivered such crimes. But I have to say, I don't feel bad about this placement. On Letterboxd, I think it was at a 3-star. I think it's a safe 2.5 star for me. 2.5 stars of respect. And I'm with my kids. We don't really need to watch it anytime soon.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Luckily, no, it's fine. It's totally fine. To each their own. I think that's totally fine. Is it a 2.5 with a like or 2.5 no like?
Well, I mean, if it's because yours is a 5-star and a like. Is that where you are?
No, I think 5 stars is a little too strong for this one. It definitely has its issues. I actually think it's a 4-star and a like, despite my effusive love for it. I
think it'll average to a like, right? 2.5 and a like. How are we do? What's the rule again? Do you even remember? We have a rule.
But I don't remember what it is. I feel like it's just something like we just have to talk about it and decide. Is it going to be a like? Because it's 4, 2.5 and a 4. So what is that? 3.25.
So I think 3.25. I think wasn't the rule that if it's over a certain point, it automatically gets a like or something?
I can't remember. Maybe.
We should have an equation. We need an equation, Andy.
Theoretically, if it's over 2.5, it would get a like if one of us at least has a like, right?
I think that is a fair thing to assume. So those are the two conditions. If one of us has a like and the average is over 2.5 stars, it automatically gets a like.
New rule. There it is.
New rule.
See if we remember that next time we need it.
We won't. So there you go. What do we get? Is it that becomes a 3.5 star?
Yeah, it'll bump up to 3.5.
All right. So there you go on Letterboxd. That's fine. I'm fine with that. That's fine. It was a good movie to watch, and I really enjoyed talking about it with you and with Mel. And now I am excited, Andy, to talk about our next series.
Oh, it's going to be dark, Pete.
It's going to be dark. This is your chance to shine.
We are jumping across the pond. We're going over to Sweden, actually. We're going to be jumping into the Millennium Trilogy, looking at the original The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, directed by Niels Arden Oplev. and then we're going to be watching the 2 follow-ups that are. I'm curious about the versions that we have, because I know the girl who played with fire and the girl who kicked the hornet's nest were like they had really long TV versions over there. But I don't know if I'm not sure what versions we actually have available to us here. So I guess we'll be exploring that as we go along with these.
So you don't have yours yet? Do you have yours?
The movie?
The versions of the movie that you're going to watch for the show? Because I feel like we should know.
Well, the girl with the dragon tattoo, I'm already watching that one, and that was a theatrical film that Oplev directed, but I think that the other 2. That Oplev did not direct. I'm trying to remember who directed. I think it was Alfredson, Daniel Alfredson.
Well, Niels Arden Oplev has a director credit on both of those.
Right,
Alfredson. Yes. And Alfredson does too on all 3 of them. But I will tell you, the versions that I have are from iTunes, and they are all extended editions. And the girl that kicked the hornet's nest is 3 hours and 6 minutes. The girl who played with fire is 3 hours and 7 minutes, and the girl with the dragon tattoo 3 hours and 7 minutes.
Wow!
I'm watching over 9 hours of these movies.
I have the Blu-ray version of the dragon tattoo right now, and it's 2.5 hours. So I'm losing a whole half hour plus that you are getting. So I'm curious, I guess, how that's going to play out. But
this is good. This is very good. And I've only seen all of these movies once. I very, very much liked them, but I've only seen them once. I don't think I'm going to remember what's new.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do some research since I'm going to be missing it to see what I'm missing.
I'm going to make sure to choose the deep scene dive from something that you aren't going to be able to see.
Oh, you.
All right. Well, that's a treat. I can't wait to dig into those. And thank you for your conversation tonight. Thank you, David Bowie, for those pants. And thank you, Mel, for the suggestion and for coming to us from down under to join us on the show. It was great to have your voice as a part of the conversation. Because you know the drill, Andy. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, a platform for internet rage.
Here it is.
Here it is, Andy. I'm coming at you with a 1-star, and it's okay. It's a 1-star review of the movie. I would give it a 1-star of reviews, and I'll tell you why in a moment. This is the review is 1 star, and it pass on this one is the review. Holy moly! What an achingly bad movie this is to watch. Terrible production, terrible acting, terrible direction, terrible quality. Shut it off after 10 minutes. I couldn't take it any longer. All right, Andy. Why do I hate this review so much?
Because it said it was a terrible movie, Pete.
No, because he said it was a terrible movie and that he'd only watched 10 minutes of it. That is not cool. That defiles the act of reviewing. You got to watch the whole thing.
I agree. It's if you're not going to watch the whole thing, you
don't get to review.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't get to review. That's take it back. Take it back. You take that back, Amazon. All right, what's yours?
Creepy movie about a codpiece stuffing pedophile Peeping Tom who has stolen a girl's brother in order to impress her, while the girl spends her time meandering aimlessly and sometimes getting help from a gang of crudely rendered, weak-willed, and mostly selfish puppets. The rocks rolling along are the most developed and heroic players in this slapdash fantasy world.
Okay, you know what? Amazon wins with that one.
That's a pretty
way
good
to go,
one.
Amazon. Oh, dear. All right. Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy. And East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.